About 20 years ago, I was asked to edit a book, which I did, about Alfred Nobel and the letters that he wrote. And it was the most extraordinary experience, and not one I particularly enjoyed. It was one of the innumerable times when I did some work while I was living in Greece and I wasn't paid. But it was an interesting project. The Nobel Peace Prize sits at an awkward crossroads between aspiration and achievement. It's meant to honour those who, in Alfred Nobel's words, have done the most or the best work for fraternity between nations, for the abolition or reduction of standing armies, for the holding and promotion of peace congresses. And the process is sober. Nominations close each year on the 31st of January. The shortlist is assessed through expert consultation, and the nominees remain secret for 50 years. It is not a popularity contest nor a referendum. On the year's headlines, it's a judgment of record and of consequence. And if Trump isn't going to win anything this year, he might win something next year. It's ridiculous for him to think that he can win a peace prize when no peace has actually been achieved. Last year's laureate was Nihon Hidankyo, the Confederation of Hibakusha, the survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, honoured for an unglamorous generational labour, testimony, education and a persistent campaign to entrench the nuclear taboo. The award was a reminder that sometimes the most powerful peace work is quiet, cumulative and resistant to the theatrics of the news cycle. So who could have won this year, and why does it matter? Serious analysis of the prize identified a number of front runners whose work, whatever one's politics, constitutes serious contributions to peace. Sudan's emergency response rooms, a vast volunteer network that has fed, sheltered, evacuated and documented civilians during Sudan's catastrophic war, often acting where the state has failed. Recognizing them would have shone a light on the world's largest humanitarian crisis and on the civic infrastructures that make any eventual peace possible. The Committee to Protect Journalists, or a press freedom pairing similar to, in spirit to 2021's award, an argument that truth-telling under fire is a precondition for de-escalation and accountability, and silenced societies rarely make peace. The International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court, imperfect institutions that nonetheless attempt to discipline war with law and to personalise responsibility with atrocity. And such an award would have been a statement about norms over impunity, and institutions, individuals who symbolise civic courage inside authoritarian or closing spaces, like Yulia Navalnaya continuing the anti-corruption cause, Chao Huangtung defending assembly and memory in Hong Kong. These nominations argue that peace is not only war's absence, but the presence of rights that allow conflicts to be processed without bullets. Cross-community movements like Standing Together, Israelis and Palestinians organising for equality, de-escalation and humane policy even in the darkest hours. Awards like this have a long Nobel pedigree, not for an ending a war alone, but for building the social conditions that make an end durable. And then there's the loudest candidacy in public debate, Donald Trump. It's true that heads of government, MPs, academics, former laureates can nominate, and some did, no doubt. It's also true that the committee is not obliged to be impressed by a public campaign. The rules are boring by design. Nominations closed on the 31st of January. Whatever happened afterwards, and the committee decisions all took place in confidence. Odds markets are theatre, not jurisprudence. What should matter is the record. Has a party brokered not simply for a pause, but the foundations of a just peace that will hold? Have they reduced standing armies or the resort to arms? Have they strengthened the architecture that prevents relapse? By those tests, the Gaza war hangs over everything like dust. Independent tallies put Palestinian deaths at well over 60,000, with vast physical ruin and mass displacement across the Strip, UN agencies and major news wires have described entire districts rendered uninhabitable, hospitals degraded, schools shattered, famine conditions reported, and an emergency that has lasted 2 full years. One can applaud any credible step towards a ceasefire and hostage releases and still state clearly that the ledger of human suffering is immense and the political end state unresolved. Awards should follow durable peace, not anticipated, and this is why the Nobel often, but not always, but often, rewards the work behind closed doors. The ceasefire that holds because local women's committees have kitchens ready and evacuation plans rehearsed, the demobilisation that sticks because a court is seen to be even-handed, the reconciliation that survives a bad week because journalists kept the story honest while tempers cooled. None of that is photogenic, all of it is peace. And we should also be frank about the prize's mixed history. Gandhi never received it, Kissinger did, alongside Obama. Obama's early award remains contested. The committee sometimes errs, sometimes corrects course, and always works under the pressure of events and symbolism. But if the lesson of Hibakusha stands, it's because it's that moral clarity can be patient as well as urgent. So, what is the use of a Nobel Peace Prize in a year like this? First, signalling. A committee with global attention can lift an underreported crisis or an uncelebrated actor into view. Think of Sudan's volunteers. Think of local Israeli-Palestinian volunteers. A prize can change their security, their funding, their ability to convene, and that is not nothing. Second, the standards. By awarding institutions like the ICJ or the ICC, the committee reiterates that war should be bounded by law and that atrocity is not simply politics by other means. You may dislike particular decisions, but the alternative is not neutrality, it's the silence in which massacres flourish. And third, memory. The Hibakusha did not prevent all nuclear dangers. They didn't help build a taboo. They helped build a taboo that has held in wartime for nearly 80 years. In a century of reinvigorating arsenals, that is an achievement worth reteaching. So where then does conscience enter? So we need to send a call to the conscience of the world. One may dispute particular figures or appointment of blame. The moral core, however, is incontestable. True justice is not measured by awards, but by conscience. In Gaza, conscience requires accuracy about the scale of ruin, empathy for the dead and the living, and a hard insistence that any political settlement must give civilians on both sides the right to live without sirens or siege. Conscience also requires skepticism towards theatrical peacemaking, whoever performs it. A press conference is not a peace, a photo is not a peace, a plan is not a settlement that both bereaved peoples can bear. If I were drafting the committee's brief for a future award, it would be this: to recognise the unheralded infrastructures of peace, the kitchens, the clinics, the corridors that reduce violence tomorrow morning, to reward truth-tellers whose reporting and documentation makes atrocity harder, not easier, to back the courts and norms that restrain rulers, not only rival militias, to honour civic courage inside regimes where dissent is criminalised, and when leaders do contribute to a durable settlement that survivors themselves judge credible, reward that, but only then. The old line says prizes do not create virtue. True, but they can concentrate attention on the places where virtue is already at work and starved of resources. They can teach public groups, and they can teach the public spaces, that peace work really looks like this, not grandstanding, but graft. And this is really the key. That the prize is not the test. The test is whether in 10 years families in Gaza and Sderot can walk to school in safety, where the Sudanese communities can cook their own food in their own homes, where the Russian and Ukrainian prisoners can come home alive, where the journalists can ask abusive power the questions that make violence less likely next month. Give the medals to whoever helps deliver that world. steadily, measurably, and with the consent of the people who must live in it. Awards are nice, conscience is necessary, and peace, when it comes, is usually built by those who do the work when no one is watching.